You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Here we go.
Welcome to the GrantCast. My name is Grant Baciocco. It is a pleasure to have you listening, subscribing, being here as part of my online family. An absolute pleasure. I am talking to you from my brand new studio. This is my brand new studio. It probably sounds a little different just because that's what studios do when you move. It's also not a studio in the strictest sense of the word studio. It's not soundproof or anything like that. And as I mentioned, I think in the last episode, we now live under the flight path of the Burbank Airport. So guaranteed you will probably hear a plane go by, unless the amazing Stephen Staver, who edits all of my ramblings, puts some sort of audio hoodoo on it, and you don't. I'm not going to talk a ton about moving. I do feel that moving is like a real, like, kind of soul-searching experience because you physically touch everything you own. And I think that really puts a lot of things in perspective. You know what I mean? Like you're touching everything, and you can touch everything and go, why do I have this? I haven't touched this since the last time I moved. So, it's a really crazy thing. The other thing, and I don't know if this is true, this is just something that popped into my head, and it's my new motivator. And that is that rich people don't have anything. Have you ever seen, I know I'm basing this because I'm not a rich person, and I'm basing this off of Hollywood things, but you see a rich person's house, there's nothing in it. And, walking around Toluca Lake, there's a lot of rich people houses, and when you look in through the windows, they don't have a lot of stuff. It's all kind of sparse, and I'm sure there's exceptions. So my new thing is, if I get rid of everything, I'll get rich. I will let you know how that turns out because I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. When you move, you do kind of that. You do several of them. I don't know. I do. But that last sweep where you look in every drawer, you get a step stool and look on top of every shelf. You look just everywhere. And the kitchen was cleaned out, and so I was doing that in the kitchen. And Suzanne said, "I've already looked through it. There's nothing here." And I looked in, we had these weird cabinets that went straight in, but then made an immediate right and immediate left-hand turn. And so in one of them, I found, I don't know what it was. It was a Silpat or something like that, that was in a back corner. I don't know, a wooden spoon or something like that. And it was oh yeah, this was back here. And then I reached around to this other thing, and I felt this heavy plastic thing. I couldn't see it, and I immediately could not figure out what it was. And I pulled it out, and it was a bottle of Tropicana pink lemonade. Now, what you need to know is that we lived in that place for 5 years. Before that, I think it was empty a year. We don't, nor have we ever bought or drank or felt like we were going to drink Tropicana pink lemonade. And so this had been there a long time, and it showed. There were things floating. It was totally sealed, but I don't know what happens to Tropicana pink lemonade after several years. But there was some grody looking stuff floating around in there. It was still 100% sealed, but it swore me off of Tropicana pink lemonade. Now, I do want to tell this story. It's a little bit of a serious story, and I did tell Toily told a version of this story. So if you're a Toily fan and you've heard this, I apologize. When you move, you make several trips between the old place and the new place. And one time when we were headed back to the old place from the new place, I was driving. We were kind of caravanning. I had gone a different route that I didn't normally go. And the streets are very narrow sometimes, and especially if you have cars parked on either side, it's a 2-lane street, but they get even narrower. And so I was driving down this street, and there was a man on a bike, and I very careful. There was a whole kind of line of cars, and very carefully, one by one, everyone went around the man on the bike. And I was kind of the last person. There were no other cars behind me. And then I noticed that these cars were kind of moving slow, and I realized that there was another bike rider way up ahead. So one by one, I think there's 4 cars. We all passed this guy on the bike. And I passed the guy on the bike right as I approached an intersection. And so I stopped at the intersection, 4-way stop. I look both ways, and right before I'm about to go, I look at my rear view mirror just in time to see a car come flying out of a driveway and smash into the guy riding the bike, the second guy riding the bike. I saw this guy flip in the air and land with a smack on the pavement. It was horrible. I would be very happy not to see something like that again. I safely looked around. I made a right-hand turn. I parked the car. I, ran over. I got my phone. I was going to call 911. By the time I walked to where this guy was, he had pulled himself up where he was sitting on the curb, but he was holding his knee. And then the car started driving away. And I don't know if this other person was walking or if they had been driving too and they saw this happening, because he could have been driving the other way. He physically got in front of the car and said, "Stop, stop, stop, stop," because this guy's bike was under the front of the car. Yeah, he wasn't going anywhere. He was dealing with getting that guy pulled over out of the middle of the street. And I went up to this guy and I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you all right? Do you want me to call an ambulance?" And he immediately, he said, no, I'm not going to do his voice, but he said he communicated he doesn't speak English. So I got out Google Translate, and I started translating, "Do you need a doctor?" And he said, no. Well, this brought, the commotion brought people out of the house that this car had zoomed out of the driveway of. And there was this woman, and she, "What happened? What happened out here? Whoa, what happened? Oh, you got hit? Oh, got hit. And I quickly realized that she was the mom of the kid in the car. And here's what I will say. There was a truck parked in front of their house. I believe that the kid did not see the guy on the bike. Of course, this kid's not going to purposely try to hit this guy on the bike. I do believe, because I saw it, he came out too fast for having an obstructed view. Coming out of that driveway too fast for having an obstructed view. He should have been crawling out of there. And I soon found out why he was so distracted, because as he got out of the car, he was in full graduation, cap, gown, flower lay, which I guess is a thing, everything. He gets out of the car. He comes walking over. He's shocked, obviously, because he just hit a guy. But he was on his way to his graduation. The mom immediately starts saying to the guy who doesn't speak English and does not want an ambulance called, she immediately starts going, "You're okay, right? You're okay. You're all right. Right? You're okay. You're okay. Everything's okay, right? You're fine. You're fine." And I was like, that's not yours thing to say. She turns to her son. She grabs his face. She holds his face in her hands and said, "Listen, I don't want you to worry about this. I'm going to take care of everything. Everything's going to be fine. You get in the car, go to the graduation, drive safe, call me when you get there, and you don't even worry about any of this. It's all going to be taken care of." This guy did not. He was adamant. He didn't want an ambulance called. He didn't want the police called. And he eventually stood up. He checked out his bike, and it was like a little motorized electronic bike. And he just drove away. And, before he drove away, when the mom, this is an important part of the story, when the mom said, "Just go, I'll take care of it. It's all going to be okay." The kid nodded. He took a few steps over to the guy where the guy was sitting on the curb, holds out his fist for a fist bump, and says, "Sorry, bro." And then he was gone. He got in his car, drove away. I took a picture of his license plate. I made sure that the guy had the picture of the license plate. and my info, so if he needed to talk to anybody to back him up. So be careful when you're pulling out of driveways, because I don't want to have to see that kind of baloney again. It was really just, and the mom just sending the kid on the way really upset me. And that's it. That's all the story I wanted to say. I do have one other thing. Our new house is kind of close to where we lived before we moved to the house we just sold. It's it's probably about 5 minutes away, but it's closer to where it was. When we lived there, I used to go to this Subway all the time, and I loved. Listen, people don't like Subway. That's fine. I like Subway. I'll go and I'll have a veggie sandwich or I'll have a turkey sandwich. You go to your places. I'll go to my places. I like going to Subway. So I used to go to the Subway all the time. And the owner of the Subway was a super nice guy. And he's like one of those guys who's always chatting with everybody there. And here's the other thing I'll say about this Subway. This Subway still has most of the same staff from when I used to go to it very regularly 5-6 years ago. So this guy must be doing something right to have so many people stay for so long, right? So this guy, I remembered that he always called me Brian. I don't know why he called me Brian. He's helped me check out. I've handed him my card or whatever when I'm paying for things, but he always calls me Brian, and I just never ever worried about it or whatever. I was like, yeah, this guy just thinks I'm Brian. So for the first time, I'm back at this Subway. This was like last week or the week before. The owner comes in and he sees me and he goes, and now I have my AirPods in, so I can't quite hear him, but he's like, hey, like he was really excited. He's like, hey, it's good to see you. And I don't hear what he says until after he says it, and I've already agreed to it. But he did say, it's Brian, right? And I was taking out my AirPods going, yeah. And then he goes, oh, well, it's great to see you. And I realized I'm too late. I could have corrected him in that moment. I could have said, no, it's Grant. But now he permanently thinks that my name is Brian because I agreed to it, because I didn't quite hear what he said, and I just said yes. And now I'm Brian. So the guy who owns the Subway doesn't know my name, and it's too late to correct him. That's going to do it for this episode of the GrantCast. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for subscribing. I want to send a special shout out to all the Patreon patrons. Patreon patrons at a certain level get to see a video recording of this. Doesn't that make you jealous? It does. Face it. But thank you to all. Big thank you to my editor, Stephen Staver. And I will talk to you next time right here on the GrantCast. This episode of the GrantCast was edited by Stephen Staver, who probably did the artwork as well. This episode was made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a pledge for as little as $1 a month. Big shout out to all of our patrons, and a special shout out to our patron producers, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Andrew Calcagno, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, and Vicky Sebring. Patrons at the behind-the-scenes level and above get access to a video of the recording of this show. If you'd like to become a patron and receive episodes of the GrantCast before they are released, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media today and set up your monthly pledge. And thank you for your support. This episode of the GrantCast is copyright 2023 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.